Greetings and salutations, friends, old friends, and hopefully some new friends this evening. And we welcome all of you. Tonight is kind of a special event, at least it is for me, because tonight I'm going to get to talk to somebody that I have been following for quite some time. And he and I have never spoken. Well, no, we did one time on Erica Luke's show for a little bit on a stream, but we've never had a real one-on-one conversation. And you guys know how I am. I like that this show gives me a passport into some of the most interesting people on planet Earth, really. And so I get to use this show to get that access and have these amazing, interesting conversations. And what can I tell you about Jack Brewer? Mr. Brewer is a real researcher. And I say that sort of out of respect, because it seems to me that there is a lack of real research lately. And you've all heard me talk about right-click researchers. That is, people who, if you cannot find it through Google, they just don't. There seems to be a lack of investigative journalism lately, the kind of thing that Mr. Brewer excels at. He is, filing FOIAs and making phone calls and firing off emails, asking a lot of people a lot of questions that sometimes make people uncomfortable. And that is why I respect him as an author and researcher and sort of journalist. I've been following his Expanding Frontiers research blog for some time, and he has done some amazing investigative stories, not just on conspiracy land stories, but he also covers the government and a lot of different government organizations. He is sort of a government watchdog, and he also is a published author. I have his book on NICAP, which is an interesting story, essentially, of intelligence, the intelligence community's infiltration into UFO land. And I thought, what an amazing story that was. And we are seeing an incredible amount of parallels to that story now. It's like all of this has happened before, and it will all happen again. You've heard me talk about the recent intelligence community infiltration into the UFO community. We've got information warfare specialists coming from the government or former government, coming into the UFO community, telling fantastic stories of aliens and UFOs and all kinds of things. And we've also got CIA agents and DIA agents and all manner of alphabet soup intelligence people suddenly front and center in the UFO community, grabbing the spotlight and, I believe, controlling the narrative. So here to help us break all of this down. And also, he had a recent piece on Skinwalker Ranch that was just incredible to see some of the financial dealings behind that television show. I love it when someone like Mr. Brewer can use his skills to peel back the layers of a story and really bring it to us. So joining us today, Mr. Jack Brewer. Welcome, Mr. Brewer. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Oh, it's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I've wanted to have you here for quite some time.
Such a flattering introduction. Maybe I should just quit while I'm ahead and thank you for that.
Oh no, listen, it's well deserved. And you're one of those people who, like, I just admired from afar. I read the blog and all the stories that you do, and I hear you on with Erica Luke's. But one thing I don't think that I've ever heard you talk about, and I ask everybody this the first time in, is what is it that got you sort of down the rabbit hole with UFOs and aliens and conspiracy land? What started you off in this? When was it? And then can you tell us more about your organization?
Sure. I was always interested in UFOs and fringe topics, paranormal topics. I'm almost 60 years old, so that puts me as a childhood watching the major networks in the 70s. And there were paranormal shows about ESP and In Search Of and these different.
Yeah, Leonard Nimoy. I've watched those reruns. Yeah.
And while it may and it is worse lately, where there's more cable networks now, infinitely more, and we're inundated with bad research and untruths these days. But used to be, you got it a little less frequently, but that didn't make it any less believable and entertaining. And you'd see the stars that you like and admire in these shows, week to week, or uh, narrating documentaries. And I'd order, as I think many of your listeners and viewers, I'd order paranormal books at the book fairs at school and things like that. So I was always interested in it. And uh, in the last 20 years or so, last 20 to 30 years, I got more involved and was interested enough to start asking specific people questions and attending UFO conferences. And it was concerning how these stories would fall apart when
Yeah, we see that a lot lately, right?
yeah, when I would approach people like Bud Hopkins with specific questions, that from seeing him on television and from reading his paperbacks, one would have had the impression he would be eager to discuss things. And
Yeah, show you
he was a
evidence, right? Yeah.
yeah, he was a charismatic man, as many of them are, that could command an audience, and he could influence people. And most importantly, a lot of these people can present really good stories in paperback books. And I was finding when I approached them that stories were often not as solid. And so then I started feeling like I had some things to add to the subject and started
Yeah,
writing.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I started writing the UFO Trail blog in 2010, and then that led to the two books. Um, it's pretty much how I
Yeah,
ended
I
up
have to get
on
the
the
other one.
internet tonight.
Yeah,
Say
and
that
don't you
again.
know, maybe you had the same maybe you had the same feeling that I did. Like I started investigating some of these people and their claims, and I was kind of like horrified, like why are these people appearing at UFO conferences and nobody fact checked their military background or their job history, and they're saying these things and it's really not true. I was kind of horrified that nobody was doing it. And then I kind of felt like I have to do something about this. Like I have to, like you said, contribute. And my contribution is if nobody else is going to fact check some of these people, I'm going to fact check what they say and we'll see what pans out. And it has been, it's like entertaining to me to fact check people like Stephen Greer when he says ridiculous things like, and Mr. Brewer, I do funny things like go to he Mr. Greer said that he briefed every sitting U.S. president since Ronald Reagan. So we went to all the libraries. No mention of Stephen Greer. We reached out to the press offices of people. No, they never heard of him. They didn't get and I just think it's funny that there's sort of this delusional world where we just play along. Everybody just plays along. And people like you are kind of going, no, I'm not playing along.
Yeah. The intelligence community plays a big role. Another thing I was finding is sometimes the witnesses and the self-described experiencers will be a little cautious or reluctant about this fame they're getting at UFO conferences and things. And I was finding, like in the 1990s and the early 2000s, when I was looking into this, that they really were persuaded in a lot of circumstances to lay it on thick, so to speak.
I
And
like that. I like that way of saying it. Yeah.
And it was typical to find people that when you gain their confidence and they didn't think they're going to end up in a blog post or a book or something, like they don't want the hassle, but would tell me things like, I really just wasn't sure what had happened. And so I got involved with this group or this researcher, and they told me they thought this and that and the other. And then, like, the next thing they know, they're, the star of the book. And uh, that was concerningly common. But about the organization, and thank you for asking, Expanding Frontiers Research, I had been following the work of Erica Lukes, and she has just an incredible collection of
I know.
everything from memorabilia and paperbacks and magazines to actual research collections that have been donated to her by now late researchers and or their families. And I had followed her show closely too, and I got in contact with her a few times about stories I was writing and research I was doing for books. And we had a certain rapport going. And I approached her at one point about that I knew some things about the nonprofit industry, and that if she ever wanted to discuss it, I could tell her some questions she could ask herself to see if it might be a good idea for her to be involved with incorporating a nonprofit for her archive and research interests. And eventually she did discuss that more. And to cut to the chase, we came to the conclusion that it would be advantageous to help platform for both of our research and our interests and her collections. And she had been getting mentoring from Barry Greenwood during this time, and she asked him to round out the board of directors, which is the three of us, and we incorporated Expanding Frontiers Research. And that's how that started. And I got to tell you, it has just been, it has far exceeded my best expectations. I sincerely could not be happier with interacting with Erica and working with her, and the stories we've done, and the FOIAs and the work that we've been able to contribute to the genre as a whole.
Yeah, and I like that you made it a nonprofit. I think if I had to do everything all over again, I would have done the same, because I feel like, this isn't my full-time job, though we have people support the show, and I have a separate account, separate spreadsheets. Every penny that comes into the show is only used for the show. I don't commingle, my personal money and the show money, but I would have done things a little differently. But I think it's great because it deserves to be a charity, what you do, Mr. Brewer, because you are providing a public service as a watchdog to some of these organizations that truly need somebody to really dig into them. And I've been impressed with your ability to sort of dig into something, and then you kind of find the dirt. And then what I'm most respectful of is that you confront the people with the dirt, and then you ask them more questions. And you're able to really pull a lot through FOIA and public records. And a lot of people aren't aware that, like, these government agencies, they have to give you the information, but they're reluctant to. They try not to. They use exemptions or whatever they can. But when I noticed that, I feel like when you start digging, they kind of are initially reluctant, or they try to withhold, or they try to play games with you a little bit. And then when they realize how serious Mr. Brewer is, he just hits them with more requests and more requests and more requests. And one thing that I learned from you is, if you're getting resistance, you need to amplify your requests and amplify your demands. And then it seems to me in some of the cases that I saw you do this, they kind of back off. They kind of go, I'll just give them what they want. And, and this is a public service. So I think it should be a charity. And also, I'm kind of always been a student of history, and I love the fact that Erica is going around and preserving all of these old documents and case files. And, some people have pictures and evidence and witness testimony. It should be preserved. So I'm glad there's an organization like yours that is out there to do these things. I wanted to pivot to talk a little more about your understanding of Skinwalker Ranch. And I want to know, just as a general overview, what did you think of the whole thing, the whole selling of this mythology? Because that's what I think they're selling. They're just selling mythology and this sort of, we're a serious scientific, we're doing serious science here, but everything's really just about entertainment. Can you give us a breakdown of how you first learned about Skinwalker Ranch and what you have learned about the whole thing?
Well, probably like a number of your old timers, I might have first heard about it via Art Bell and Coast to Coast AM back in the day. George Knapp's book, things like this were probably how I first heard about it. And in that way, I really want to give Erica another shout out about the influence she has in these blog posts that usually I write most of, but she's really significant. And that's actually one of the ways I first started interacting with her about research, was asking her about goings-ons in the Uinta Basin and directions I would go with certain blog posts and stories. And she just has a lot of contacts that have been very helpful in that area. My conclusion at this point is I really don't know any other way to put it, Steve, but everyone directly involved with Skinwalker Ranch is an unreliable narrator and has been since day one. There is virtually nothing that can be presented for public review to justify or validate any of their claims. Could some of it be true? Could there be something going on? I can't conclusively say there's not, but I can tell you I've dug pretty hard into it.
I noticed. Yeah, that's why I really wanted to.
Nothing there that can validate it. No.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So, but what do you think of the fact that $22 million of taxpayer dollars was wasted on studying a ranch that this guy, Bigelow, to me, it seems like a complete and total scam, because this man owned the ranch, and then the same man gets a contract for $22 million to study, I guess, paranormal stuff and UFOs. And it's a no-bid contract. He was a former donor of the person that got the money procured. It seems real shady to give somebody, it's like, Mr. Brewer, can I get $22 million to study my own house? I'll just say it's haunted, and then we'll study my house for a while. Like this, can you talk a little bit about the financial situation there, and then into the financial situation now? Because it appears to me, from all of my research and looking into things, that Skinwalker is this money. It's like an ATM for paranormal people. Yeah. Like you just go there and there's all these people extracting millions of dollars out of this ranch. And yet when Mr. Stephen Greenstreet goes there and says, "Show me your best evidence," they show him a video of an inchworm or a caterpillar and a bug. And that's all they have after, So can we break down for me some of the financial end of this? And do you agree with me that this is one big paranormal money machine?
I certainly understand that point of view. We discovered through public record disclosures that are posted, as you graciously pointed out, on our blog at Expanding Frontiers. We discovered that Uinta County was financing the paranormal conference that many Skinwalker guys were going to, and was paying them to continue with and promote these crazy stories that couldn't be validated. And there were a lot of things that were significant about that to me. And I'm not talking about $300 or $400. I'm talking about tens of thousands of dollars these people have individually collected from Uinta County to appear at
Yeah, and
phenomenal.
just to be clear for people that are not very familiar with it, so the stars of the Skinwalker Ranch History Television show enter into some kind of agreement that's supposed to be economic development for the community, but it amounts to run a conference here about Skinwalker Ranch, and we'll give you all this money. Right. And like, I don't understand.
Somewhat.
So isn't it like the local town is saying we endorse all these paranormal claims because we can make money from this too?
You're right that essentially it's a Scooby-Doo story. That's
Scooby-Doo, Mr. Brewer. Those damn kids, and they would have gotten away with it, Mr. Brewer, if not for you.
That part is correct. A little more technically, Phenomicon gets paid by Uinta County, and Uinta County pays the speakers. George Knapp has been paid, Thomas Winterton, Travis Taylor,
Jeremy Corbell. Yeah.
Significant amounts of money. And so that gave them a financial interest in promoting these unverified stories while they're claiming to be doing scientific research, which is the textbook definition of a conflict of interest. Then it was while we were looking into that and further studying records that we discovered in the Uinta County budget, there was a payment to Colliers International, which is Brandon Fugel is associated
by Mr. Fugel. Yeah.
Yes. And then we discovered through records requests that they actually hadn't paid Colliers International. They had paid Intermountain Economic Consultants, IEC.
And then that's Thomas Whitmore's company, right?
One of the other stars. That's Winterton and Fugel and James Morse. Yes, Winterton and Fugel, which are all Skinwalker Ranch folks. And they received about $175,000 combined from 3 different counties. We discovered, as you know, once we started pulling the thread. And it's not clear what they provided in return for that. And Mr. Winterton, to his credit, spoke with me about it.
That was one of my favorite things that I've seen. Yeah.
Thank you. He does have.
Yeah. For those unaware, Mr. Brewer, and here's the thing I love about you. You were so calm and even toned and respectful to him, but you still hammered him, and he was sweating and trying to explain it, and he was doing a very poor job. And I remember thinking when I was watching this, he made a bad decision to do that with you. Had he just kept his mouth shut or given you written statements, it might have went better for him. but he really didn't have any answers. He's like, oh, well, because we're doing this, everybody's making money. Like the hotels and the local restaurants love us doing this, but it still doesn't equate. And I love that you brought up, like, can you show us some spreadsheets of tax revenue to prove that this county giving you guys all this money is increasing the tax revenue in the town, because this would be reflected by sales tax? And he started stuttering, and he had no, like, it was a great piece, a great gotcha moment too.
Thank you.
But it was like an underrated gotcha moment, because he didn't even realize what he was getting whacked with. Like the fact that he made statements he can't prove, like the whole community's benefiting. And to his credit, Mr. Brewer said, if that were true, you could show us some tax records that show an increase in sales tax and everybody's economically benefiting. He didn't have that, so there's this incestuous, weird relationship between the local community and the stars of Skinwalker Ranch, who are essentially getting paid. I still am not quite sure what the township gets out of it, or what the town is getting.
No, it was not clear. And Mr. Fugel had written some proposals that we obtained through records requests, and it did not appear that things were promised had been delivered.
Yeah, and Winterton had a problem with that.
Yeah, library.
Like, oh well,
training,
I remember
they were
listening
delivered.
to him. Yeah.
It was not clear they were delivered.
Yeah, and he seemed to really falter on this idea. He was making excuses like, well, I was filming for my television show, so I told him that those would be delivered later. Those benefits we promised would be delivered later, or those things would be completed at a later date. And it just, I have a business, Mr. Brewer, and if I say, give me $10,000 and I will complete this job by this date, I can't say, well, hey, I got busy with other money interests like a television show, so I'm going to have to hold you off. I'm going to have to put you off on those things I promised. It doesn't make any sense. It looked to me, and look, I'm going to say this because I don't want you to, but it looked to me like just some kind of government payoff so that the government can get in on the financial benefits, I guess, of promoting these stories.
They do have peculiar relationships. I would agree with that. And the bottom line to me was that none of the three counties renewed the contracts, and none of their county commissioners wanted to speak with us about how pleased or disappointed they were in the service provided.
And don't you think that when somebody refuses,
that's always a red flag to me?
Yeah, it's like, why are you refusing?
The projects don't want to talk about if in hindsight they were pleased with the projects. That's quite a red flag in what should be a transparent county government.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I'm talking over you. I think we have a little bit of delay going on. But I was just going to say that when I do stories, if somebody won't answer questions at all, it's a really big red flag to me, because you're right. These are government people. There should be transparency in the financial dealings of the county. And I've often thought that the only people that fear questions are people with something to hide. Otherwise, why wouldn't they just answer your question? You had simple questions for them. And the fact that they didn't renew it, don't you think that may be due to the increased scrutiny and coverage that you sort of brought in there?
It had already expired by the time Erica and I discovered the expenditures in the Uinta County budget. So they had already not renewed it, and no one wanted to talk to us about why that might be. Nor did they want to have a comment about if they were pleased with the work that was performed. They just didn't want to discuss it. And that was a somewhat, granted they're all in mesh, but that was a somewhat different issue from the over 200 grand that was spent on Phenomenon in its first 2 years. And we did get some officials to speak with us about that. But it still had a way of ending kind of short. Like in fact, I described it to Thomas Winterton in my discussion with him on Zoom as that it feels like there's a certain entitlement that when they're held accountable, they feel offended. And
Yeah.
like there was a city manager that outright, he and I exchanged a couple of emails, and then he just outright told me, I'm just not responding to any more questions. And okay.
Yeah, I've faced a lot of stuff like that as well, and I often don't know, maybe I should learn from the benefit of somebody with your experience, because I go one of two ways when that happens. Either I say, all right, I've gotten all I can from them, and whatever, I'll write up the scripts for the show, and I'll do the show, and I'll just report that. Or sometimes I get aggressive and I say, well, then give me your boss then, pal, because somebody's answering these questions. And we want to thank Ralph Master 23 for becoming a member. If you become a member during the live broadcast, we'll give you a shout out and a big thank you. Thank you, Ralph Master. We appreciate it. And so what is the bottom line, do you think, about Skinwalker? Do you think, because I just kind of think it's a big circus money machine, and there's no evidence. I haven't seen any, nothing conclusive. There's a lot of, it's kind of like the UFO world. The Skinwalker Ranch has whole books written about werewolves and dino beavers, and they say they had all this evidence, but then when asked for the evidence, George Knapp had to admit on Joe Rogan, well, we don't have any evidence. And it's like, you put it right in your book that you had all this evidence. And I was trying to find the bumper, because there's some funny George Knapp stories about guys with dog heads smoking cigarettes, and it's just so ridiculous. And dino beavers and werewolves that they shot and they couldn't kill, and these cows got put inside a trailer magically. And but we don't, it's kind of like the UFO community. We see a lot of like stories where we hear these stories, but then when you ask for the evidence, it's just a story, kind of like mythology, But do you think there's any evidence, or is this just one big money hustle?
I have no reason to think that there is. I have not seen. I have not been presented. I have not obtained any significant evidence, no, from Skinwalker Ranch. And I think your assessment is fair. I think that it probably had some interest of intelligence agencies. I mean, we know it did, the DIA.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a little more complicated than just a money grift, but I think that financial interests are certainly in there. And there's a whole ecosystem of people that travel to the Uinta Basin to try to make it as YouTubers and podcasters, and that try to get in on this. And so there's just a whole, the onion analogy of different agendas that go into Skinwalker Ranch. But yeah, I think you're certainly on point for all practical purposes with your opinion of it. It's my opinion.
Well, it's good to know that
I'm not. Other thing too, as long as we're on the topic, that people really don't see unless they roll up their sleeves and they dive into it. And I know that you have encountered this as well, that your audience won't necessarily understand, but just from hearing your opinion. But when you actually deal with these people, you're aware of, like, over a few months, when the
story changes.
And they give you excuses. Well, yeah, you can get that from my assistant. Well, no, the assistant doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. And then you see them still continuing with the story, even though they know that they don't have what they're claiming they have. And so when you have stuff like that happen to you repeatedly, it's not the kind of thing that you'll like make a series of blog posts about, all these
Yeah, and
little.
document it all. First they said this, but you can get a
Yeah.
sense of the way that they're trying to be. And we want to thank Matt Alford for a kind and generous $7 Australian. Says brilliant Scooby Doo. Laugh out loud. Rip the mask off the alien, and it's Stephen Greer. I would have gotten away with it if not for those kids. I think the Scooby Doo analogy is pretty funny, and I grew up watching that. That's kind of funny. I think that I think of that a lot. Like the I would have gotten away with it. So the Skinwalker now just continues to get, I think, a little more and more ridiculous. And I agree. I think if you have a financial interest, Mr. Brewer, like, look, let's say, for example, just I'll throw out a number. Like, what if I'm getting $10,000 an episode to be on this show, and we got to find some paranormal stuff to keep that, like I'm keeping that paycheck, man. I'm going to see something, and if you're out in the woods or on a spooky ranch late at night, you're going to get the creep sometimes. There could be animals walking around in the forest surrounding the thing, or in the desert surrounding this thing. The dino beavers, apparently, according to one person that had been there, he thinks they were really big porcupines. That's what they saw. They saw a really big porcupine, and they turned it into a dino beaver, a mix between a dinosaur and a beaver. It was a big porcupine, I think they have a financial motive to keep it going. It's like finding Bigfoot. They never find Bigfoot, but they always hear knocks off in the distance, or something's walking in the woods. It must be Bigfoot, or it could be a bear, you dummy, or a deer, or a raccoon. It doesn't mean it's, they have to find something to keep the show going. But I think it's getting ridiculous with this. But there's a portal and all this other stuff, and like it just. And it got Travis Taylor, who has been heavily involved in UFOs and aliens and all of this stuff. He's a true believer. And I don't think you should put a bunch of true believers on a science mission, right? Because they're going to find what they believe.
Right. And that does kind of segue us into one of the social aspects of Skinwalker and the whole UFO topic is the amount of intelligence officers or intelligence agency consultants that get involved in this and say just the most crackpot things you can imagine that you would just be embarrassed to say in public, that these decorated officers and personnel will get on television and say. It's only natural that we deeply question their motives and wonder about why they do these things. And I've kind of gotten to where I just don't think that we can answer that. I don't think that we can. And I understand why people are so interested in, well, is it a psyop? Is it a grift? Are they working for the CIA still? What are they doing? And really, the only thing I think we can use as a compass is, do they provide evidence available for public review or no? And everything else, you just kind of got to throw aside.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting that they have, they almost kind of, they don't say it. It's kind of unsaid, but like, you can join our website and get the good stuff, And by the way, I have, just to see what was there, and nothing is there. It's fluff. It's more fluff. But they're making all this money from all these people signing up to get behind the website. You're supposed to get the good stuff, and I didn't find anything really compelling as far as evidence if you do that sign up and pay to get behind the paywall. But, and there is also this element of promoters, I would say. There's people with podcasts, and there's people with shows, live stream shows or whatever, and they all seem to play along. They don't do the hardball questions. Like, you know what I'd like to see, Mr. Brewer? I'd like to see you interview Brandon Fugel. I'd like to see me interview Brandon Fugel. I don't want to see somebody that's a huge fan of Brandon Fugel and Skinwalker Ranch just sit there and softball them. But that seems to be all that we get. Have you noticed that?
Oh, absolutely. Like a big red flag for me early on with the 2017 New York Times story was I was aware that To the Stars personnel didn't want to talk to Sarah Scoles, a science journalist and writer, and does very good work. And
a real credible person.
Such a red flag.
Yeah.
Yeah. That like, if you sincerely had something, you would want the most credible people coming and questioning you. Like if you were to ask me, Stephen, well, can you show us these financial documents you got on these conferences and on Uinta County? I would welcome the questions. I mean, they're posted on our website.
You post them publicly. Yeah, they're publicly there. And by the way, I enjoyed reading them. I felt like you were like pulling back the curtain and letting everybody see what was behind that curtain. And I love stuff like that. Like, oh, documents they'd rather I didn't look at. Let me look at those, Yeah. Yeah, you're right. If people really have evidence, they'll show it. They're not going to be shy about it,
And when writers won't post that stuff, and like we were talking a few minutes ago about when the subjects, when the people that you're getting comment from that agreed to give you comment start to pull back and say, I think we're done here. Well, then that needs to become the story. And like what we've seen with this latest whistleblower stuff is people are quoting documents that they were just given quotes from, but apparently weren't allowed to post the documents or didn't post the documents, whatever. And absolutely, then that needs to become the story, not what the document said, but the name of the person and the agency therewith that gave you this document and said you're not allowed to have it is the story at that point.
I did a story not long ago, Mr. Brewer. This is a crazy story, and I'm going to ask you more about this off air because there's a local double murder in my area, and I decided I would investigate it. So I go to the police and the local district attorney, and hey, I'm an investigative journalist. And they go, well, we can't give you anything. You got to file right to know requests. So I started filing all these right to know requests, and they denied all of them. This is case file. You're not a police officer. You're not getting anything. And there was a lot of weird stuff. For 30 years, people thought that these double murders would be solved because at the scene of the double murder was an earring that everybody assumed or said was ripped out of the ear of the attacker, and it had skin cells and blood on it. So I started asking, have you done the genealogy DNA? Like the Golden State Killer case. You might be able to find a cousin or a relative, and that will narrow down and you'll find your killers. We can't answer any of those questions. It's an ongoing investigation. It's 30 years old. Oh, and by the way, recently they said that earring and the skin cells and the blood were not relevant to the case. They determined it wasn't relevant to the case. And so I go to the local district attorney and I say, how often do you find a bloody earring with skin on it at the scene of a double murder that's not relevant to the case? Can you explain how you made this determination? Total blackout. The guy told me, we're not answering any more questions. You can file as many right to know requests as you want. And then there was this whole big thing where they said I wasn't allowed to ask questions. I had to put questions in a right to know request, and that's not proper. But I did it because I knew it wasn't proper. And finally, the district attorney just called me one day and tried to make peace. And he said, I don't have the staff to deal with all your requests. You got to stop doing that. And I said, well, then answer my question, then answer the questions. So I'm going to get some advice to you about how to proceed with that, because we're at a dead end. They won't say how they made a determination that this isn't relevant to the case. They won't answer questions about DNA. Did you get it? Did you get a match? And then you eliminate that person. So there's always these things that happen in these cases where you can only go so far, sometimes. And then there's a dead end. And you face a lot of them, but it seems to me that you know some of the tricks that I don't, to get over the dead ends and force them to comply with some kind of transparency.
I try. I've had some good teachers, and I welcome your questions as well as anyone else's. Just reach out to us at Expanding Frontiers, and if we can't help you with your request, we can point you towards people that have credentials and do this for a living and whatnot.
Yeah, and I have the help now of a former law enforcement investigator, and we're going to go through everything we have on that case, all the right to know denials and requests and all the paperwork. And I'm telling you, I got 50 pages of paperwork back and forth, and then we're going to start over. Remember me? I'm not going away. And if you're not giving it to me, then I'm going to the state district attorney. If he's not giving it to me, I don't think that they can just, it's a 30-year-old double murder case that nobody ever solved. The family would like closure. They won't give anything. And there's all kinds of conspiracy theories locally about why this is. People are saying that it was a police officer, and other conspiracies. So yeah, I'm gonna try to talk to you off air about that situation. But I wanted to get into, what are your thoughts, because this is coming back and this stuff always goes in cycles. I want to know your thoughts on UFO crash retrievals. Is there any legitimacy to all of the stories, the claims? Is it all hoaxes? And then we'll get into the newest craze is whistleblower. That's the new key. Everybody's a whistleblower. Even people with no evidence, Mr. Brewer, are suddenly getting the term whistleblower attached to their name. And I don't think they're whistleblowers if they have no evidence. But on the crash retrievals, it appears to me, I have things from Leonard Stringfield that go back to the 70s about crash retrievals. Unfortunately, Mr. Stringfield would not name any of his sources. So it's all sourced stories from anonymous sources. And in some of Stringfield's stories, it was like there was 6 witnesses, and this person said this, and this person said this, and this person saw this, and this person. But we're talking about like a bunch of anonymous sources that no one else is allowed to interview, fact check, or even know the names of. But these crash retrieval stories seem to go back a long way. Stringfield started them, and then Bill Moore, and then some other people. Of course, then we get into Bob Lazar. Then we have Clifford Stone. There's been all of these different people that were so-called whistleblowers blowing the whistle on the UFO crash retrievals, but we only get stories. And I mean, I went back and reread a lot of things on crash retrievals recently, because I wanted to know, am I just not remembering that some of these cases and stories did have evidence? And no, it's literally, you read the books, you read the stories, it's stories. Lazar's a story, no evidence. Stringfield had a book full of stories, no evidence. And we have the Trinity case that Jacques Vallée covered that spectacularly just came crashing down as a complete and total fantasy. It didn't happen. But now, is there anything to the crash retrievals in your opinion, or is this more mythology?
No.
That's a simple answer.
No, there's not. A few years ago, I did a blog post at the UFO Trail called Paper UFOs. And it looked at the modern UFO phenomenon, like from 1940s to present. And crash retrievals, crash saucers is just a recurring theme all through every decade. And many, many instances that we don't even talk about a lot. And per usual, when you try to really get the evidence, these stories dissipate. There was one a few years back about the Great Lakes Dive Company that claimed that they had sonar images of these shocking shapes on the bottom of, I believe it was Lake Superior, where
Oh, I
that
think
they
that's the one
were.
that looked like the Millennium Falcon, but it was just
And
rocks. It was,
yeah, and they were correlating it with an old UFO report of a plane that went down at the time. And James Carrion and Frank Warren really looked hard into that one. And when they tried to um, get Great Lakes Dive Company under a glass, the guy just stopped communicating, and the whole story just
I
vanished.
remember. Yeah, the whole story went away, and there was supposed to
Yeah,
be a second. There was supposed to be a big dive, and they were going to get the evidence. But it seems to me like a lot of chase the carrot like that, like fantastic claims. And I did a piece on this where I talked about this. A lot of these so-called whistleblowers and UFO crash retrieval stories. It's like we get a story, and then they promise that they're going to come through with some evidence, but that time never comes, and they either vanish or they're on to the next story. I do think, however, that it's important to point out, Mr. Brewer, that there are actual crash retrieval programs in the United States. If a Soviet satellite goes down, a Chinese drone, a Chinese balloon, whatever, any adversarial technology that crashes, whether it be space technology, aerospace technology, drone technology, any kind of technology, if the United States government can get their hands on it and take it apart for intelligence purposes to see what these guys are, what our adversaries have, what capabilities have, they do that. And I think that some of these people may have confused some kind of adversarial technology because of the compartmentalization. Like, what if you were just given metal fragments from a Chinese drone and it used some kind of metal 3D printing, which is just coming online? That material would look very strange to somebody who wasn't familiar with it. There may be rumors, people talking back and forth. Do you think this is maybe from aliens? Because we don't know what it is. And then people get a whiff of that, of those stories within the intelligence community, and somehow this gets turned into aliens. But for sure, I know Project Moondust, I have paperwork from that and other projects that there have been to grab Soviet technology. We grabbed whole Soviet MiG. We once spent a ton of money to pull we were trying to get a Soviet submarine up
under
from
a
the bottom of
cover story. Yes,
under a
under
cover
a
story.
cover
Yes.
story provided by a billionaire. Yeah, that's correct. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so they try to get their hands on any foreign adversary technology they can to take apart and learn from and check out their capabilities. But I would love to believe that the aliens, for whatever reason, they crash and we got a hold of it. And it's thought provoking. Like, what if Roswell really was alien spacecraft? They covered it up. They had bodies, biological samples. They had weird technology that they you know put away and they're studying. But mostly we have stories. We don't have physical evidence. And by the way, I should mention, Mr. Brewer, that I have some materials that someone gave me and claimed is extraterrestrial metal fragments from an extraterrestrial spacecraft. I have tried. I'm going to get somebody to do, an elemental and isotopic analysis of it, but it's very expensive. So it's sitting in a drawer. I may have the smoking gun of alien crash retrieval just sitting in a drawer, but I need like $1,000 to pay somebody to do the analysis.
Right.
And to me, these claims of alien technology, we've got Gary Nolan claiming, he's looking at arts parts. We have arts parts that were largely debunked, and people making all these fantastical claims about metamaterials was a big buzzword a few years ago. And metamaterials doesn't mean alien. It means a strange, weird, new manufacturing process for a material. That's what it means generally. So it seems to me like that this is all wishful thinking. Like, because I don't know what you know about this, but they, if you have a metal sample, you put it in a mass spectrometer, it'll tell you what elements it's made of. If you have a mass spectrometer capable of isotopic ratios, it'll tell you if it's normal, earthly, ordinary metals, or if it came from another star system, you'd be able to tell that instantly from the isotopic ratios, which would be different in another star system for the same material. So aluminum would be different isotopes than and iron, magnesium, whatever the element is, it would be different if it came from Proxima Centauri. If it was aluminum from Proxima Centauri, we might not know it was from Proxima Centauri, but we would know this was not from our Earth solar system here. And all of these people seem to like gloss over that it's so simple to determine if a metal is from another world or not. And they don't deliver the goods, and then they make excuses. We had this ball shavings, the Ross Coulthart with the big metal ball. Like, he said they had conclusive proof of alien technology, all confirmed by this man. And then in the promos, he cut to a shot of Michio Kaku. Michio Kaku didn't confirm anything. They didn't even do the analysis yet. It's been a year. It's one of those stories where they promise evidence, and they're going to bring it to us, but then the story just goes away.
Absolutely. I have a couple of go-to people that actually have, chemistry degrees and are scientists, and I'll give them a link and say, does this sound right? When one of those stories come along, and they'll like be, oh my God, they are just like, this is like designed for people that don't know what the hell they're talking about. Why they do this? Certainly, for some people it's money, for some it's attention. I really couldn't say why government contractors and intelligence personnel get so wrapped up in this. I think there's a lot of reasons, and that is what I've actually come to find fascinating, is the social aspects of it and the things we can FOIA and the things we can look for. And like what you're saying, Steve, about these different programs and how people may mean well but may be misguided. And there's just a whole aspect of it, a whole perspective we could look at, where there's interest by adversaries as well, that if they can get the American public literally harassing intelligence officials and agency spokespeople to declassify more documents and to answer questions about this program and that program, then that's certainly not something that those agencies are happy about, And but then the way agencies is they'll kind of spin that around and say, well, then we'll promote it ourselves, and we'll look for the people that have inordinate interests in this, and they don't seem to be the stereotypical UFO person, but foreign nationals that want to know about these isotope ratios that are pushing the UFO stories. And you just end up with a whole convoluted, complex game of intelligence and counterintelligence. And I think in a lot of circumstances, the public has come to be considered just collateral damage in that. And contractors don't care, that are just trying to get big money contracts. Defense agencies don't care, that are wanting increases in budgets. Politicians certainly don't care, that are just informed by their consultants as to whether a story like UAP, whether they start talking about it at the point consultants tell them it would be more advantageous to get on this bandwagon than not. And that's when Marco Rubio and that nut in Tennessee and the rest of them start talking about
Yeah,
UAP.
Burchett is the one who's going to hold the hearings with the new whistleblower, David
Yes,
Grush.
who believes in UFOs because they're in the Bible. That is correct, or at least that's his story, and he's sticking to it. I mean, we could do a whole thesis on this community of people that a bare minimum of them give a damn what's true or not.
Yeah, and I have seen sort of this purposeful, manipulative way of deceptively crafting a story over and over again. It seems to me that they sit down and they think about, like, how can we play up the strengths of the story being true and play down the evidence that it's not true, and deceptively we see this Grush story. It seems to be falling apart. Like, they reported all these things that we now know were not accurate, and this Mr. Grush is also apparently heavily connected. I did a story, had the exclusive that Mr. Grush and Gary Nolan went to Canadian Parliament before his so-called disclosure here in the United States. And they had meetings with members of the Canadian Parliament where he told the same stories and offered no evidence. And in that exchange, Mr. Grush started talking about something, and so did Gary Nolan. And Ross Coulthart cautioned them that they had to save that for the documentary. So apparently this Mr. Grush already had a documentary deal before he became a public figure. And he also wiped his internet presence of his previous businesses in his local area, and every webpage with pictures of him. And, I thought that was suspicious. And the guy spent some time working for, working in information warfare before he came out. And he has all of these ties to Lou Elizondo and Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff. And it just reminded me that, like, essentially, I feel like that this guy is just the sequel to a movie we've already seen, right? But he's the new guy in the spotlight, but all the rest of the actors behind the scenes are the same. And it's suspicious to me that all of the people involved in Skinwalker Ranch and TTSA were associates of this person. He knows all of them. He spent time with them. I'm told he's been hanging out with those people. And here he comes telling the same stories they told us already before, but didn't prove. But it's a different guy, right? None of this makes sense to me. And a whistleblower with no evidence. Can we talk about that? Do you think a whistleblower is a whistleblower? I said that these people are, including Greer's so-called whistleblowers, who also have no evidence. They got pretty drawings somebody made, but they don't have evidence. So to me, you're not a whistleblower. You're a storyteller. Give us the evidence, and then you're a whistleblower, right? Or am I wrong on that point?
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think Snowden is a good example of that.
Yeah, he had terabytes of data. Of data he gave journalists.
Yeah, Chelsea Manning. They actually have something. I also think that we're at a point that we should expect a whistleblower to contact and retain an attorney firm that has national security experience. And I think there's any number of them that I'm aware of, and I don't have anything to do with national security, yet just from knowing this topic, I'm aware of some that I think would be interested in a case that had legitimate evidence about not just UFOs, but that what they do is handle cases where the individuals are concerned about the process and the ethics involved in what they've become aware of. When they don't have counsel like that, and I mean, this was just terrible when the law firm, virtually immediately announced that it was no longer associated with Mr. Grush. I mean, this just isn't what we should expect to see out of a legitimate story. And from
Yeah,
what
it's
from
suspicious.
what
It's
I can
suspicious.
tell, it looks more like a human resource complaint, and I feel like that the law firm was stating that as well, that we didn't represent him about crash retrievals and such. We were just representing his due process and his complaints about how he was treated.
And isn't it rare though for an attorney to just say, to issue a statement to say we no longer represent him and we don't support his claims? And also, it would appear to me that there's a lot of deceptions in this story, and one of them that is that the intelligence community inspector general found his claims to be urgent and credible, but then we find out they're talking about his claims of some kind of reprisal or retaliation. They're not endorsing. The people selling the story made it seem like the intelligence community inspector general was calling his claims of aliens and crash retrievals and bodies urgent and credible, when they were only commenting on the complaint that he filed. And there also seems to be a little bit of connect the dots you have to do, but it may very well be that this person got reprimanded or investigated for releasing classified information to UFO peddlers in the form of George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. So I think the story is going to come crashing down, but isn't it interesting that the original article had so many deceptions in it?
I think that's a fair thing to say. I interpreted it that way. I really, I don't have the experience to say whether it's odd that a law firm release a statement like that. But like you and everybody else, I can certainly, use what brains God gave me and say, well, that sure doesn't help the story.
Yes, and also the mention of John from the Black Vault had an excellent sort of a mini story today that all of the major tenets of this story, including the 1933 Italy crash, claims of bodies and recovered material, and all of this were used on someone before Mr. Grush. The same storyline, the same information that he's repeating was used on this person that was secretly filmed for Elizondo's television show. And he felt misled and, taken advantage of. So the whole thing starts to fall apart to me. We've got all of these people that did this before. And Blumenthal and Keene have been incredibly deceptive before to sell a story. And here we are again, and now we're catching them that a lot of the things in their article were completely and totally factually inaccurate. And I think that this is not a mistake. It's like they have a history of massaging the data to sell the story and make the story believable. Kane and Blumenthal downplayed the Skinwalker poltergeists and dino beavers, and they got so many facts wrong, and their primary source for that story was Lou Elizondo. So whose fault is it that they got all the facts wrong? They didn't fact check him. They just ran with what he said. And here we go again. This guy just says these things, has no documents. A big red flag for me is that on News Nation, somebody asked Leslie Kean, is it a problem for you or a red flag that you haven't seen any evidence? And she said, absolutely not. And I almost fell off my chair. You mean to tell me that this guy is saying all these fantastical things and you don't consider it a red flag that he has not shown you, even the person writing the article, the evidence? And then there's this issue over the bodies. She said, oh, we're not going to talk about the bodies. That wasn't in my article. But if this guy is saying bodies, why wouldn't that be in your article? She purposefully left it out because that was a bridge too far for her or something. It's like this whole thing is one carefully. It seems like stagecraft to me. It seems like theater. Like, let's show everybody the illusion of a government whistleblower that has the truth about the crash retrievals and the flying saucers we're back engineering. It seems very contrived and almost childish in its deception to create this illusion. Or is this, just true believers true believing?
It's hard to tell motive. Leslie Kean had been accused of and did in many stories over the years, asserted things that she could not show to be accurate in those stories. And I could give you specific examples. I've written about them.
Yeah, I noticed.
Yeah, the Chilean air show where she claimed there were like 5 different shots from different video cameras, never produced them. She didn't have them, it would appear. She was all in on the Jim Mortellero alien abduction with Bud Hopkins. That eventually other associates released statements that it was a fraudulent case. She was studying that Japanese airline case over near Alaska, and she claimed she had a source claiming there was a cover-up. I knew some researchers in contact with her that they had 2 sources that were at the meeting that she was claiming the cover-up was issued. Their sources said not only was no cover-up issued, but that information was disseminated and given out for analysis. And she not only ignored this and proceeded with her version of the story, but obstructed contact between those researchers and her source.
Yeah, she didn't want her source and her story to fall apart. And, most troubling for me is that I have to ask, because I have many friends that are just true believers, and a few of them I kind of got aside and I said, you gotta answer a question for me. Is it not relevant that Leslie Kean has been caught selling 100% provably fake stories before multiple times, and also that she was married to or lived with this? I always get them confused. I got them confused last time. I confused John Mack and Bud Hopkins. So she had a romantic relationship, living, common law with Bud Hopkins, who was just an artist, and somehow everybody he hypnotized when he had no training or, degree in hypnosis or psychology was suddenly an alien abduction victim. And also Leslie Kean is a true believer of many strange things. She believes in ghosts and the afterlife, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But Mr. Brewer, she believes in all of the early spiritualist stuff. The mediums that ring bells, that's a sign of life after death. The ectoplasm, she believes that's real. So I asked my true believer friends, like, isn't this relevant that this woman has all these wacky beliefs and you're just going to trust that the story she's telling you is accurate? Don't you think we have to look at the history of the people bringing us the story? And by the way, Ross Coulthard has also been caught selling provably fake stories multiple times. He was let go or contract not renewed for 60 Minutes Australia because of a completely and totally inaccurate story about the British Parliament and a pedo ring. It was a complete and total fake story, and it went out super hyped up, the biggest British scandal ever. And the story fell apart right after broadcast. He didn't do any due diligence. The witnesses were wackadoos, and they were known to lie a lot. And so all the people bringing us the story, it appears to me that we have 3 people that have been caught selling provably fake stories multiple times before, all 3 of them. And then perhaps behind the scenes, we have all of these other people who have brought us provably fake stories before, or just made fantastical claims, collected a lot of money, and never delivered the goods, influencing this so-called whistleblower. It all seems very suspicious to me. And I don't understand how the true believers don't find a problem with these facts that I'm mentioning here, right?
I think that those are fair concerns. To me, Leslie Kean, I don't know what motivates her, but what her actions look like to me, it reminds me of a religious zealot that thinks the ends justify the means. And I remember Jacques Vallée wrote about once that he had been in he had some knowledge of some hoaxers that believed there are UFOs, there are aliens, so it's okay to hoax it, you know, because it's true. So what does it hurt? And she kind of reminds me of that mentality to some extent, that the ends just justify the means.
Yeah, it seems to me. And you're probably aware of the many more, let's just call you a little more veteran researcher than me. I think that's a fair assessment. And you have been around to see these cycles of these so-called UFO whistleblowers. I'm sure that you were paying attention at least a little bit to all of them, including Bob Lazar, Phil Corso, maybe this Clifford Stone, and Stephen Greer, and all his so-called disclosure, witnesses. And I'm not wrong when I say that none of these UFO whistleblowers have ever come through with proof in the whole history of this thing, right? So why should we believe this one? That's where I'm at with this.
You are not wrong. I'm from the generation that it was a really big deal when these guys were on Larry King Live, CNN, Stanton Friedman, Steve Bassett, Stephen Greer. In 1999, they were on Art Bell, Greer, Bassett, and a man named Joseph Firmage were on with Art Bell, Disclosure 1999, and they were telling us that it was happening any day. I just cannot overemphasize that this has been going on since 1950. It requires new audiences. It requires people that are not aware of the history. It requires promoters that are under or don't care and have hidden agendas. There is certainly an intelligence community component to this. Are some of them sincere, true believers? Probably. And add in, all the other possibilities as well that we could diagram. But I think you and most of your viewers have got a pretty good idea what they all are. We had whistleblowers in the 1950s and 1960s with NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, that were incredibly high ranking and decorated, and left in their wake a fascinating question of why these decorated officers called out and acted disloyal and untrusting of the agencies and branches of government that they had served for so many years and had made them heroes. I mean, the director of Central Intelligence was the chairman of the board for NICAP for a while.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about the parallels between NICAP, which was just filled, and also, a lot of people are saying from the True Believer side, well, we've never had somebody this high ranking saying these things. And I would beg to differ, because Philip Corso probably had higher classifications and clearances than this David Grush. He never proved any of his claims, and most of his claims fell apart right after the book came out. So there's this assumption, though, that, well, he's got to be telling the truth because he's a high-ranking official. But we have a history of high-ranking officials saying kind of wackadoo stuff, right? And NICAP sort of infiltrating the UFO community, and it was filled with intelligence people, high-ranking ones, and former military people, high-ranking ones, And now it seems like we have the same thing going on. All of these intelligence people coming into the UFO community. Are we seeing a repeat of some of the NICAP story here?
Absolutely, we are there. It's fascinating, and I would highly encourage people to make the comparisons and go back and look at what's similar in 1957, 1958, 1967, when they began congressional hearings on UFOs, and see what's similar and what's different. We're absolutely seeing it repeat, where high ranking intelligence agency and military officers are leaking information, are making claims, extraordinary claims about UFOs and alien contact. And it's just fascinating. In the case of NICAP, we had overt senior intelligence officers and what appeared to be covert undercover people working in the organization as well. And to kind of circle back to what I was saying earlier about global adversaries' interest in America just chasing its tail about UFOs, it's just mind-boggling that Major Kehoe was calling on military officers to leak information to him about classified projects. Then he wanted the Air Force and intelligence agencies, the CIA, Air Force Office of Special Investigations, to have a public forum with him where he and NICAP representatives questioned them about various projects and circumstances, and they did not have to even reveal their sources to the CIA and the Air Force. He was chastised by a certain congressman about what the congressman just felt like was just, just so unreasonable that it defied description. And I can certainly understand that point of view, that do people get this kind of UFO blinders on, that they're unable to consider what if there's not a UFO in this story, that you're demanding we open our files and show the world what we're doing here? And as you of course know, Steve, another parallel is there can never be enough denials by Pentagon spokespeople and military officers that will satisfy this group that is convinced there are hangars with aircraft, with spacecraft in them. There are films. There is this. There is that, and as there's just never going to be enough statements saying we don't have it, that are going to be good enough. And I'm not saying that there's absolutely nothing necessarily to any UFO report anybody ever made anywhere. I don't know, maybe there's some natural phenomena that needs better study. Maybe there's some artificial phenomena that needs better study. I don't know. But I do know that when we focus on this band that you've been talking about, the Skinwalker guys, the Pentagon guys,
TTSA guys,
this alliance they have, that we can see things in these stories that are huge red flags and that don't check out and don't make sense. Like if they've got craft, what do they need to study it for at Skinwalker Ranch? Like why?
That's a real If you've got intact,
why would they need to
vehicles,
be in bed with MUFON if they've got craft in a hangar?
These are sometimes just simple logic will let let you have a story fall apart. We did a piece on Stephen Greer's his so-called historic disclosure event. He showed an illustration of a so-called deep military underground base, and on the surface was this huge pile of cars. It was like 200 cars and a big line of porta potties. And so we did a humorous story about like this is so ridiculous. They've got technology sufficient to back engineer alien spacecraft and anti-gravitic technology and electrogravitics and anti-gravity and free energy technology that we got from the aliens, but you can't put a bathroom in the base. Like everybody's got to go upstairs and use the porta potty while they're working there, and park your car right outside the secret base entrance, right? So that any Soviet satellite or Chinese satellite or anybody can see there's something going on. It's this just simple logic is enough to rip apart some of these stories sometimes. And I wanted to ask you to both of your books are on Amazon. I'm familiar with the NICAP book, which tells a compelling story of, I would say, intelligence and military interference in the UFO issue and community. Even like you said, like covert spying on groups and things that is crazy. And I found it interesting because I read it from the lens of what I already believe is that this is going on right now. We've got Richard Doty, former Air Force Office of Special Investigation, fully integrated into the UFO community now. We've got John Ramirez, a CIA agent. He's talking about crazy things, reptilian aliens and big disclosure event, and the aliens are coming soon and disclosure's coming. And we've got Anjali, former Defense Intelligence Agency information warfare specialist. She came and told this whole story about the aliens in the tunnel, and we busted her story as being completely fake. But she's still here telling news stories. We had Elizondo, who ran an imaginary UFO program that never existed, was unfunded, wasn't secret. We were told it was a secret Pentagon UFO program that he was the director of. And even just the term calling him the director was deceptive. You're the director of a program that doesn't exist, you know, and it wasn't funded. You told us it was funded. And all of these stories sort of have these deception layers. And once you peel back those layers of deception, you go, this is not what people are claiming it to be.
Right. I mean, I'm the director of the football pool down here at the corner bar. You know, I mean, and that was probably better organized. You know, yeah.
So we have all these intelligence people though coming into the UFO community, and all I see is that they're filling their pockets with money. So part of me thinks it's just a grift. Like, hey, I have great credentials. I could go talk about UFOs and make $5,000 or $10,000 in a speaking fee, or make documentaries, television shows, books, and make a lot of money. They're just light on evidence, and all are very deceptive. But it makes me wonder. Like, I read your book through the lens of what I see happening now. All these intelligence people and three-letter agency people. Oh, John D'Souza, former FBI. He claims that the X-Files stole ideas for the X-Files show from his secret FBI files that I don't think exist. We're digging on that right now. So we've got FBI, DIA, CIA, former Pentagon intelligence. Now we've got this Dave Grush, who was also an information warfare specialist, coming and telling incredible tales. And NICAP was kind of similar but different story, but it also involved them injecting themselves into this issue, into this topic, and making demands, kind of like is happening now. All these people demanded a Pentagon program to study this, and then they got it. And then when the program told them things like, we don't see any aliens, we see some strange and anomalous things, and we're working to identify or explain them. Now there's a cover-up again, and those people are telling us the truth. You demanded this agency. This is what you wanted, for somebody to take this seriously. And then they did. And what their findings were not in line with your preconceived beliefs, or, what you think is really happening. Like you said, they're convinced there's aliens in a hangar. There's pickled aliens in jars somewhere, or there's craft in a hangar somewhere. It's crazy to me that They got what they wanted, but when the guy didn't tell them what they wanted to hear, suddenly he's the bad guy and we need a new program, or right? The same kind of thing with NICAP. They demanded that the government do certain things. And same kind of thing. They weren't getting the answers that they wanted from the government when the government kept going with denials of alien spacecraft.
Right, right. In NICAP's case, they pushed for and they got their congressional hearings. And one of the things that came out of that was Congress mandated the Condon Committee at the University of Colorado to compile a report on the UFO situation. Then that was not flattering to NICAP or the UFO circumstances. And then about 1969, NICAP then fell into pretty much being committed to debating the findings of the Condon report and trying to prove that the Condon report was a cover up. Years later, Richard Hall of NICAP, and who was very influential in providing the Condon Committee with reports, wrote to the effect that he really didn't think that it was a cover up as much as the people just really weren't interested in UFOs that were doing the report. And I have those concerns about this Aero agency, for instance. I feel like some really interesting things could come out of a thorough investigation from like 1945 forward of the intelligence community's involvement in the steeplechase and different things that have gone on. But I have trouble envisioning that you even come up with enough FOIA officers and researchers and CIA clerks that give a damn. I mean, why would they really?
Well, you know what I relate it to, Mr. Brewer, and tell me if you agree with me. What we've got is a bunch of people that believe that aliens are visiting planet Earth. But it's not an evidence-based belief system. That is a faith-based belief system, which is a lot like religion. So all of these UFO people demanding taxpayer resources, time, employees, whole organizations be formed. You're demanding that the government spend all this time and resources investigating your faith-based belief system, and somehow this is supposed to be okay. But could you imagine if like all the Scientologists got together and they demanded that the government investigate the science of Scientology to prove that it's really the greatest thing ever? You know what I mean? It's the same. It would be almost the same thing. The Scientologists can't all get together and demand government resources. And as big a fan I am of UFO mythology and history and lore, I don't think we should be wasting taxpayer money on it unless there's really going to be smoking gun evidence and a reason to. If you're just going to make these guys chase shadows for years, or stories that can't be verified or corroborated or proven to be true. Am I wrong in this assessment? Like, what do you think would happen if any other faith-based belief group got together? Like, it's like the Hare Krishnas. What if they got together and forced the government to spend all kinds of money proving meditation is the way to live your life? Or Scientologists got together and wanted the government to spend resources and investigate L. Ron Hubbard's so-called science. Or the Mormons got together and said, we want you to prove that those golden plates of Joseph Smith were real. That would be unacceptable. They would just say, we're not doing this. We're not going to, but somehow these UFO believers think that they have the right to make these demands on our government.
I think this is a great topic because they have often come at it, in my opinion, disingenuously by trying to say that it's a national security issue. They've tried to say that it's an air safety issue. And oftentimes those dogs really don't hunt. I mean, they're more people probably get injured by falling furniture than they do flying into UFOs, and there's a lot of problems with that approach when we know what they were really interested in is trying to get woo into the public eye. Like, I mean, Kane, as we sat here talking about, admits it, that she tried to make it seem as serious and logical as possible. So on the one hand, I think there's enough government waste, and I think that there are certainly other topics that could deserve funding and attention more. And on the other hand, I would dearly love to see Luis Elizondo and Christopher Mellon called out before Congress and sworn in and said, "Let's hear it. Give us everything you got."
Yeah, and make those hearings public, and no NDAs, no
Yeah,
clearances. You tell us what you
now's
got.
your time. Make your
Yeah,
case. Give
yeah,
us names. Who told you what? What program were they working in? What agency? And then we're going to call them out here and see, does this go anywhere? Sure. Why not?
yeah, because I don't know. Part of me is getting a little bitter that it feels like like I said, it feels like a bunch of wackadoos at times are like making all these demands of the government, and that's all our money you're wasting. You could be wasting. I mean, if you have smoking gun evidence, drop it. You put it out. But there's always some excuse, and this guy's excuse is, oh well, the programs are classified. So, and then people are saying ridiculous things like members of Congress aren't even cleared to hear this. Well, then they'll get cleared. They're on the Senate Intelligence Committee. You can tell them anything in closed door session. This is ridiculous, right? This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to also mention that Mr. Brewer has two excellent books. The one that I have read, I'm going to read his second one. I'm going to order it today, actually. This first book is Wayward Sons, NICAP and the Intelligence Community. I thoroughly enjoyed it, highly recommend it. And the other one that I'm looking forward to reading that I would have read first, but somehow I don't know how I got a hold of the other one. The Grays Have Been Framed: Exploitation in the UFO Community. Can you explain a little bit about that book, and that's how we'll leave you here?
Sure. That book is, as we've kind of circled back to the beginning, as I began talking to the pro extraterrestrial alien abduction people, the hypnosis advocates, I began looking into what the history of hypnosis is, and what do the experts tell us, and then what do the witnesses tell us, and what has happened with this topic. And I go into the Carpenter affair and spoke with people involved with it, and which was an instance where MUFON's director of abduction research sold copies of case files and allegedly recordings of hypnosis sessions to Robert Bigelow.
Yeah, and they were supposed to be confidential reports, right?
Yeah. The people certainly had no knowledge this was going on. And as you and I have been discussing tonight, I just go over several circumstances of exploitation of the topic. And some of it involves intelligence agencies, some of it doesn't, and oftentimes the motives are unclear. And as I mentioned earlier, just if you have any questions about FOIA circumstances or research circumstances, reach out to us at expandingfrontiersresearch.org, and we would be happy to help or point you in the direction of people that will. And if you're interested in either of my books, I have a standing offer that if now's not a good time to buy one, or if you'd be willing to do a short review on Amazon if you enjoy reading them, I'm happy to provide a free PDF of either book. Just get
That's awesome, Mr. Brewer. But for me, I have a huge collection of ebooks and PDFs, but I can't stand reading on a tablet. I much prefer the physical book. So I'm going to buy the book. But I love that you are willing to. It's the same kind of thing that we do here. You know, for people that have a really true interest and just don't have a couple of bucks, I want to thank you for doing that. Because we do the same kind of thing here. We have some extras on Patreon, and if you remember, but I always say, if you're having a tough time, just email me and I'll send you the same links, you know, because the information is important, and getting it in the hands of people who have a genuine interest, especially being a niche topic like this. It's great that you do that. So I'm going to look forward to reading The Grays Have Been Framed, because this is right up my alley. And I also wanted to mention to you that I interviewed Barbara Lamb, who does a lot of hypnosis, and she is a true believer. Everybody she hypnotized, suddenly they're an alien abduction victim. That's not a coincidence to me. These people that are doing these hypnotic regressions with so-called abduction victims, they're not impartial, you know, clinical hypnotists or anything like that. They're kind of wackadoos. I'll just say it. And she had a book on the hybrids, and I offered to pay for DNA tests for all these people that claim to be human hybrids, and they wouldn't do it. And so interesting and great to get to finally talk to you in person. I'm so glad that you're here. I hope you won't be a stranger. And I want to let people know that you can follow Jack Brewer on Twitter. You can visit his website, or you can buy one of his books on Amazon and support his excellent work. And the links to do all of that are right in the description of this video. So I hope you're going to come back soon, Mr. Brewer. I'm going to read your book, and then I'll make you come back. I think that would be good, right?
Sounds good.
I'll read this other book, because I think a show
by
just...
the way, Barbara Lamb makes, I couldn't cover.
But here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say, Mr. Brewer. Barbara Lamb looks like, sounds like, and incredibly reminds me of my grandmother. And I mean, I had two grandmothers, but I was close with one. She reminds me so much that I had a hard time. Like, I gotcha'd her really good in the interview, because I started pushing her like, look, I'll pay for the DNA. If there's any kind of, if they really are alien hybrids, these people, you're selling a book claiming they are, any of these people take a DNA test, we'll know right away. And I'll pay for it. And there was all these excuses. They can't do it. The government will find out about them. And, you know, I had a hard time being pushy with her, because she's such a nice lady. I'll give her that. She's a beautiful, nice lady. And she reminds me of my grandmom. But she reminds me of my grandmom that got hooked on wackadoo, you know, like she just reminded me of my grandmom so much that I had a hard time. I couldn't be mean to her. Or even aggressive. I was having trouble even being aggressive with her, because she's so nice and disarming. And what I walked away from saying, she truly believes that this is all 100% real. She's not a grifter. She's not a scammer. She just truly believes all of this. And so she's cherry picking data to fit her beliefs, you know, or creating data.
I think a lot of people do believe it, and then they kind of have to do these mental gymnastics to make it fit. And I go into a lot of that in The Grays. I spoke with Carol Rainey, you know, former wife of Bud Hopkins, and also it focuses a lot on the Emma Woods and David Jacobs story, and
PhD Pantygate.
It's just, you know, some of it's just really dark, but I felt like needed to be looked at a little harder.
Well, I thoroughly
enjoyed
what
I can do, you know.
I thoroughly enjoyed the NICAP book. So, and this other one is right up my alley. And I love the title, like, The Grays Have Been Framed. It's not their fault. These people are just blaming them for all this stuff. It's a great concept. Yeah, so listen, you don't be a stranger. We'll have you come. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to order the book tonight or so So I'll have it read in a few weeks. I'll contact you back, and I will contact you off air. I'm going to ask you publicly for a favor with this case that I've worked on, because I'm at a standstill with these government pricks. I need somebody to help me navigate these right to know requests and what they can and can't tell me no to, and or look at this. I thought of a new attack angle, which is to start filing right to know requests for how much resources they are dedicating to this case, because they're claiming that they can't release any of the documents because it's ongoing. Well, let's see how ongoing. How many detectives are assigned to the case? How many weeks? How much time do they spend each week working on the case? I think you can help me figure out how to start jamming it to them. So, and I'd appreciate that favor very much. And getting the knowledge of your benefit of experience will help with that case. The family would really like to know what happened, and I'd like to do whatever I can to help them. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Brewer. And you're a StreamYard veteran, so you could just close down the browser tab once I throw you out of here, and you'll be good. All your links are in the description of this video. Highly recommend his book. The first one, the NICAP book, I really enjoyed, and I'm going to get the second one, and we'll do a review here. So thank you, Mr. Brewer. You have a great evening.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, friends. Thank you, Mr. Brewer. What amazing conversation. And this is the kind of stuff that I really like. I like bringing interesting people here and just having a great conversation and bringing you all along with me. We want to thank Al Warrior for a kind and generous $10 super chat. Thank you for the kindness, generosity, and support. He says, praise the cash. And we thank Red Panda Koala for a kind and generous $5. Says, who from the flying? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your tweet till just now, but I can message him and I'll message you the answer. Who from the flying saucer era would Jack Brewer like to eat dinner with if given the opportunity? I'm sure that I can get you an answer for that. So I appreciate that. And we say thank you as well to Falconelli for a kind and generous $5 super chat. Says, thanks for your public service, Stephen. This is dedicated to the worst week of the year for me, but all good. Peace out. Well, I'm sorry that you're having that week. Boy, I call it a storm, an S-storm, and you know what word I mean. Every once in a while, just have a lot of not good things happen in a row, and that can ruin your week, your month, or more. So I'm sorry you're having a tough time, and I hope that things improve for you. And we want to thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. We also want to take a moment to thank all of our kind and generous benefactors, including our Twitch subscribers, our Patreon supporters, and our channel members. Thanks to all of you for helping us to praise the cash. Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash. And we'll take a moment to check in with our PayPal pledgers. I wanted to take a moment also to address a comment from the live chat from somebody who has sent me, I believe this person has sent multiple messages or responses to things, like YouTube comments, maybe some messages in the live chat. And I believe that person's complaint is that I have a religion and I don't demand evidence for my religion, but I demand evidence for everything else. And I guess, I've tried to address this multiple times. I have my own personal belief system or system of spirituality and belief system. I grew up Catholic. I later left the Catholic Church, and now I would consider myself a non-denominational Christian. And I also am, at least I was at one time, very big on Buddhism and meditation. And I kind of formed my own system of doing both. I find that my spiritual practices surrounding both Christianity and Buddhism have been extremely beneficial to my life, to everything. And I don't push my personal belief system on anyone else. As far as not demanding evidence, yeah, I would say spirituality or religion is largely a faith-based belief system. And if you're going to take such incredible offense to me not demanding evidence of my religious beliefs, I have demanded evidence of my religious beliefs. to priests, to ministers, to people teaching meditation classes. I have tried to ask as many questions as possible to fully understand. And I am satisfied with my own belief system because the spiritual practices that I have are very beneficial to me. They may not be to you. And you may not believe, I have a friend who's an atheist, and occasionally he and I have a conversation like, he's a huge atheist. It's just all an accident. The whole universe is just an accident. It's the Big Bang. And okay, we can agree to disagree. I look to things like the way that the universe works, the dials of the universe. And remember, the dials of the universe would probably contain an awful lot of variables, trillions, billions of different variables. And all of those variables, those knobs, are set perfectly right to create life, to create suns, to create star systems, planets, ecosystems in our case. And I'm sorry, I take that as evidence of a divine creator. You're free to disagree. If you believe everything was all an accident and there wasn't an intelligence behind the design of our universe, then I respect your opinions and beliefs. And I would hope that you would respect mine. And, I don't know what else to say on this issue, but this person has sent me a lot, several messages, I believe. And I don't think they're, I don't know what the issue is. Do I push or force my spiritual beliefs on anyone? No. My spiritual beliefs and my religious beliefs are my own. In fact, I have seen the evidence that I need to see of a divine creator, and we'll leave it at that. I find prayer and meditation very helpful in my life. So, what do you want me to do? And by the way, I have been incredibly critical of some religious beliefs, or I've been incredibly critical of the Vatican and the Catholics, but I was also the benefit of the Catholics. I got an incredible education by Catholic priests and brothers and nuns. And I mean, I knew people growing up who were going to public school who couldn't read when they were going into high school. They could barely read. So I guess there's good and bad in everything, right? The Catholics gave me a great education. And for that, I will always be thankful to them. But I sincerely disagree with a lot of Catholicism. That's why I left. I intended for a time to find a Christian church that I felt comfortable with. Never have. Maybe I will still do that. Still a possibility. For now, I practice my beliefs and spirituality solo. I read spiritual texts, including the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, text from Buddhism. I've read the Quran, the Hebrew Bible. Some people think it's all, just stories. But remember that even stories have incredible value, because as a child growing up, all of the things that make me a good person, well, not all of them, but many of the things that make me a good person, including my sense of empathy for suffering people, including my sense of fair play, morality, and good ethics, all came from stories in the Bible. So what if I found out tomorrow that all those stories were completely fictitious? Would that negate the benefits that I have gotten from them? I don't think so. And I think that, like I said, some people think that the Bible is just stories, and you're free to think that, but I have seen the benefit of those stories in my own personal life. And growing up, I became very empathetic for animals, and I became very empathetic of homeless people. And as a child, I would make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the bum that lived in our neighborhood. And I want to use that word for the homeless man. He was a probably mentally disabled veteran who found himself homeless, refused to talk to his family. I would give the guy sandwiches. I learned that from the Bible. Whatsoever you do to the least of my people, that you do unto me. That's an incredible lesson that any of us could use to live our lives by. Whatsoever you do to the least of my people, that you do unto me. I saw kids, throw rocks at that guy who was homeless, sleeping on a gutter. I gave him sandwiches, and I talked to him. I tried to help him. I brought him things, right? Once he had really bad athlete's foot. A strange thing, but he said that he needed athlete's foot powder. I borrowed it from my house. So, people could say whatever they want about me being not so skeptical of my religious beliefs. I'm beyond skepticism. I'm comfortable with where I'm at with my beliefs about religion, God, angels, demons, and spirituality. I have seen the benefits of spiritual practice, and everybody's spiritual practice is different. Some people don't pray, some people don't meditate. I try to do both, and I've seen the benefit in my life of doing those things. Especially, I think I've mentioned this before. I don't pray for myself. I pray for other people. I pray for my wife. I pray for my children. I pray for the people in Ukraine, including both sides. I pray for people who are food insecure, or living in a third world country and don't have clean drinking water. I pray for others. I find that to be beneficial to me in general. So I'm sorry if I'm not skeptical enough of religion for you. And I'm sure some people may think that that's hypocritical or cherry picking. It just is what it is. And again, since I'm not advocating or pushing my own religious beliefs on any of you, and I never will, I don't think that this is an issue. I hope that I have addressed your question. And by the way, that person has asked these kind of questions many, many times. I'm not going to address it again. But thank you for your question. Now we are going to take some comments and questions from the live chat. But before we do that, I'm supposed to remind you, like any good show host, that we are a viewer-supported show. And what that means is that our show exists, and this content that we produce is created through the kindness, generosity, and support of our audience members. I want to be sure to point out that our content is now and always will be completely available for free to anybody that wants it online. It may be ad supported, but it's free. Only those who choose to support us should do so. So, occasionally we get a lot of flack for that as well. Like, what makes you different than the grifters you cover? First of all, I have income outside of the show. This is not my full-time income. Any income to the show is kept in a separate account and is only used for the show. I have spreadsheets if anybody would ever like to really, investigate. But I'm thankful for the kindness, generosity, and support of all of you. We recently upgraded some computers and a few other things for the office here that has really enabled me to create more content. So we're a viewer-supported show. And here's our wonderful announcer. The show is not over. Get those comments and questions together. Put them in all capital letters. We're going to take a very, very short break just to remind people how they could support the show. And when I return, I'll be taking comments and questions from the live chat.
Thanks for being here. This is Truthseekers with your host, Stephen Campion. Please rate, like, and comment on our videos or podcasts. If you are listening to an audio podcast, please rate us 5 stars to help us rise in the search rankings. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to an audio podcast, we love and appreciate you listeners, but you are missing the live tapings. All our shows are recorded live with video feed. We'd love you to come be a part of our live broadcasts and tapings for the podcast. Head on over to YouTube, click the search tool, the little magnifying glass, put Truthseekers, one word in the search bar, and hit enter. You'll see a strange and mysterious guy with sunglasses. That means you found the channel. Go there, smash the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to receive up-to-date info on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to be a part of our live taping and our chat group during the live broadcasts. Seek the truth. Speak the truth. This is Truthseekers. Truthseekers.
Truthseekers is a viewer-supported show. Now there's a great way to support these broadcasts and show your support. Please be sure and check out our merchandise store. Links to our 2 merchandise online stores are in the links to this video or podcast. The Amazon storefront ships super quickly in the United States, Great Britain, and in many more places. Amazon may not ship to your country or location. If that's the case, hit our second merchandise link in the description and visit our Redbubble storefront. Merchandise from our Redbubble storefront ships worldwide, but may take longer than Amazon. We've got a great deal of super high quality merchandise for you to choose from, including t-shirts, phone cases, sweatshirts, and even pillows. The feedback from our products have been overwhelmingly great. Quality products and fast shipping. People all over the world are buying some merchandise and showing their support of the show. Praise the cash! Praise the cash! Praise the cash! We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors who are buying some merchandise and helping us to continue this journey.
Truthseekers is a viewer-supported show. Wonderful people like you who enjoy this show send pledges in the form of super chats, super stickers, super thanks, PayPal, or Cash App. Instructions for how to help are in the description. You can also join our Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month you can get extra content. Patreon supporters get a backstage pass, early access to all our production videos before they are distributed publicly, Stephen Campion's music, private writings, a monthly show journal, and more. You can also become a YouTube channel member for $5 a month. A YouTube membership includes all of the Patreon benefits, plus a special members badge, priority reply to video comments, and the live chat, plus a monthly members-only video. We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors, for supporting Truthseekers. Thank you for your generosity and support.
Okay, so we are back, and I'm always disappointed to see that maybe we shouldn't play those at the end. People think it's the end of the show. I've even got a banner saying the show's not over yet, but so many people jump off. I understand, and maybe we should start playing those. It's less than 5 minutes of a 2-hour show to remind you that we're a viewer-supported show. Maybe we should cut that down or spread them out. I don't know. we are making up the rules as we go here. And somebody asked if the merchandise store ships to Australia. Yes, it does. The Redbubble store does. And the links are in the description of the video here, as well as the links to Mr. Brewer. So comments or questions for me, please put them in all capital letters. Spooky is here and wants to buy a pony. That's nice to know, right? Archaic Revival says, very good guest. Thanks, Mr. Brewer. Come on anytime. Well, I try to not notice this stuff too, but I do want to make a comment. There are many people who are running clickbait garbage stories tonight that are they're pumping a hoax. And, it's no surprise to me who the people are that are doing that. But of course they get more viewers because they're pumping a hoax. And it's very disappointing. But, despite my complete and utter disgust with a lot of other so-called show hosts in this thing, I kind of reminded myself that we here are in a class of our own. We don't lie to our audience. We're not helping hoaxers here to sell garbage stories. And so, it's apples and oranges. You can't compare people that have no ethics, no morality, and are literally lying scumbag slime balls to me. You can't. I cannot compare myself to those people. And also, somebody sent me some nasty message about some dirtball that's, anyway, somebody sent me some nasty message and my thought was, I am not in competition with that person. That person is in competition, with how can I be how can I do something even more slimy to get ahead? How can I do something completely illegal to get ahead? How can I lie to my audience, manipulate my audience, scam my audience, help my friends scam my audience? We don't do any of that here. So it's not a competition and it's apples and oranges. You can either go somewhere where people are going to lie to you and show hosts that have provably lied to you, or you can come here and everybody makes their own choice. And, I'm reminded of that saying, don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. If you want somebody that's going to lie, tell you pretty lies and take your money while lying to you, then there's plenty of places to do that. We're going to continue doing the moral, the ethical, and the good work that we do here. And I also made a comment on our Discord earlier that someday this show is going to end. It's inevitable. All things have a beginning and all things have an ending. And when I'm done and I walk away from this webcam and this microphone and this set and this audience, when I walk away, I will walk away clear of conscience, knowing that I have done everything that I could to do this show ethically, morally, and responsibly. And I will be proud of the work that we did here when the show inevitably ends. And that's how I feel about it. I'm not going to regret not doing slimy, scammy things to get more views or to get ahead of somebody else. I'm not going to regret, gee, maybe if I would have lied to my audience more, I could have made more money before the show ended. These are not concerns of mine. And the fact that we have been able here to hit 1 million views and do it without doing the softball interviews, without playing along to get access to the so-called UFO celebrities, without lying to our audience, without helping hoaxers sell fake stories or letting people take advantage of our audience, use our audience for a victim pool to sell garbage, fake, worthless stories to, or worthless events to. I'm not going to regret not doing those things. We are in a class of our own. And the bottom feeding, garbage peddling scumbags and me, you can't compare me to them, especially not when it comes to numbers. Sure, congratulations if you're getting great numbers while you're lying to your audience, while you're scamming people. You don't get respect for getting ahead by doing dirty, scammy, scummy things. And that's just my opinion. And we are going to continue doing things our way. I'm not going to get in, I'm not going to go, gee, and by the way, our numbers here are very, very good. I'm not gonna start throwing morals and ethics in the trash now. We've got a 3-year track record of doing things the proper way here at all, whenever possible. Remember, I'm a one-man army here sometimes, but I'm doing everything that I can to do things ethically, morally. And I'm not going to be compared to, do you think it matters to me that some scumbag that it has been lying to their audience for years might have better numbers than me? No, it doesn't. Look how you got there. How you get there, the journey is its own reward. And I think how you get there is just as important. And what you do to get there is just as important as reaching the destination. And that's where we're at. And that's where we find ourselves. I want to remind you that we have some upcoming, tonight is likely going to be the last live show. I'm going to the cabin early again this week. And I'm so happy to be able to tell you that this weekend, for sure, I'm finishing that bathroom. I got to figure out a curtain rod system for the stone shower. I have to polyurethane the floor, and then it's just a few odds and ends, cleaning up and things like that. And I'll be going tomorrow night. So this is likely, every week I say I'm going to try to do a live show from the cabin, but then I get busy with the bathroom. I'm going to try again this weekend. So then we're probably going to have a fireside chat from the cabin. But I want to let you know that we have some upcoming premieres tomorrow at 4 p.m. This is our early red flags about UFO whistleblower David Grush. And look at that. We have Raffmaster 23 became a member. And there's a notice for that. So welcome, Raffmaster 23. Thank you so much for becoming a member before the premiere even starts. We appreciate that. And so this premiere tomorrow is a produced video. It's sort of a Truthseeker short. And these are the 10 early red flags about UFO whistleblower David Grush. And that'll be tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. I will be in the live chat. It's pre-recorded, but I will be right there in the live chat with all of you tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've also got this weekend, we have, I should say, another album from the Purge series, another whole full-length music album. We'll be debuting here this Saturday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This one is called Reborn. And I think this is perhaps my most emotional and personal music album that I've ever made in my life. It was about a very intense time in my life and some things that I was going through. And music became sort of a form of therapy for me during that time. And at the end of the journey of recording this album, I truly felt at peace for the first time in a very, very long time. And I'm excited and delighted to be able to bring this to you. It's my new album, Stephen Cambion Reborn. And of course, this, like all content here, will be available here for free. But we're doing a premiere 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this Saturday night. And that would be, I think it's the 17th, isn't it? Yes, this Saturday night on the 17th. I would appreciate you coming to the live chat and hanging out with us. I will be at the cabin blasting this thing through the biggest speakers that I have there and having a campfire and sort of, I guess, celebrating finally the release of this album. This was one of those albums that I started on and then thought, I'm never going to finish this album. It was also hard for many different reasons, some technical, some just, life gets in the way when you have other things going on. But I kept watering this garden of this album. I would show up and quite honestly, when we were in the stage of doing the overdubs, the basic tracks were done. I was having a terrible time. Like I couldn't play the parts right. Nothing was working. We had all kinds of technical problems as well. I'm just glad that this one is over, right? When you turn that last dial and you save that last bunch of files, and you have a full-length music album I know that I will be proud of this album for the rest of my life. And I have a pretty high bar when it comes to finishing things. It takes me a while because I want it to be right. I consider my music albums to be a little more than just music. To me, they're sculptures in sound. They're frozen in time forever. And long after I'm gone, people will be able to listen to this album and I hope enjoy it. And I hope you'll be with us this Saturday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be in the live chat celebrating the release of this album. Hope you'll be here with me. I also wanted to mention that we have another premiere, which will be tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I haven't posted it yet. I'm finishing it up and posting it tonight. So although we're done with the live shows for the week, and by the way, we did a bonus show this week for our millionth view. We got 1 million views here on the Truthseekers channel, so we did a panel show and celebration last night. As I said, we're going to try to keep it to 3 live shows a week to leave time for these produced videos. So I think this is the way that we'll be doing it going forward, which is 3 live shows per week, maybe 4 if there's time or something going on. And then the rest of the days of the week, we'll do premieres of things. My other artistic endeavors, some produced videos, Truthseekers shorts. So tomorrow night at 10 p.m. So tomorrow we have a 4 p.m. of the Truthseekers short premiere of the 10 red flags about this new whistleblower. Then at 10 p.m., let me get into the Discord and show you, because that's I have a thumbnail in there. I have not posted the show yet, but several weeks ago, I was on the radio with Ryan Gable of The Secret Teachings, and I didn't quite realize the significance of that guest appearance until I listened to it. Because we talked about George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell and the Flare hoax. We talked about Third Phase of Moon, Marina Sarin. You might remember her as that Nazi alien, alien hybrid that has alien babies. Remember her? We talked about the Corey Good depositions. We talked about Stephen Greer, Lou Elizondo, Nick Pope, and Linda Moulton Howe. And this really was like the real dirt on UFOs. So Ryan has kindly allowed me to rebroadcast the radio appearance that we did together on his show here on our channel. And I think it's a great, great conversation. And you really get a sense of what's really going on in the UFO community. So tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll have the real dirt on UFOs, and I will be in the live chat. Or you know what? No, that might be, Friday night. So tomorrow, 4 p.m., we have the debut of the Truthseekers short. Friday at 10 p.m., we have the debut of this piece, which is a great conversation between me and Ryan Gable of The Secret Teachings about all the dirt on UFOs. If you want to know the inside baseball of how some of these scams and scammers really operate, this will be a great show for you. The Real Dirt on UFOs with Ryan Gable and Stephen Cambian. That will be Friday night at 10 p.m. So we've got tomorrow a premiere, 4 p.m. That's just a Truthseekers short, though. I think it's only 15 or 20 minutes. This one is 1 hour. Special event broadcast, The Real Dirt on UFOs, Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern. And then Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern, the debut of a new music album from me. And I am glad to bring all of this sort of like extra content to you this week. The reason that I wanted to take the time off of some of the live shows is so that I could spend more time doing some of these produced works and, bringing music forward, and I have some video editing projects that we're slowly working on, including 2 new free documentaries. They'll be posted here. They're I think they're going to be very, very good. And that is part of what we consider a public service, because these are two documentaries that I don't think anybody else would make. So in order to practice my filmmaking and video editing skills, we're going to produce these two more documentaries. They'll be posted here for free right on our channel soon. And after that, we're going to streaming services with my next documentary. So I've got two more to do for, I guess you could say, for practice or for getting experience in making films. And after that, I've got a larger project that we're already sort of signed, and we're good to go on the larger project. So lots going on here. Questions or comments for me, please put them in all capital letters. Will there be a Trixie all over Pre-Deep Fans shirt merch available? Yeah, we're going to make a Trixie shirt because so many people have asked for one, right? Anything special for Roswell this year? Well, we could rebroadcast what do we have, 16 hours, I think, of Roswell coverage. We put that all together for the 75th anniversary. We could rebroadcast it, or I could try to interview somebody new. I would like to interview Nick Redfern and hear his take, because he has kind of a unique take on what may have happened at Roswell. And he was the only person that I didn't get to interview for our Roswell 75th anniversary special, right? Flares is a hoax. What is next? The birds are not real. I meant the hoax. Yeah, that is a little strange wording. Flare hoax. Well, it was flares and it was a hoax. Yeah. So questions or comments for me, please put them in all capital letters. Will you do a show on early UFO grifters like Anshar Command? We have done a show on some early contactees, including Howard Menger and Adamski, and also I always forget his name, the guy from the Integriton and Big Boulder. We have done shows on that, and we will be doing future shows on some of the early contactee movement. I'm kind of fascinated from a psychological perspective of these people that were like, hanging out with people from Venus before everybody knew that you can't live on Venus, or hanging out from people from Saturn before people knew you couldn't live on. It's not habitable, And then it's funny that some of them, including Adamski's people, changed the story later, Okay, question from Amy Collins. Do you think that after all the whistleblower stories fall into nothing, that it will make the USA look like a national embarrassment, not good for anyone, media, DOD, IC, legal system, etc.? Well, I'm on the fence on this, Amy Collins. I'm 50-50. Part of me was thinking recently, if all these whistleblowers come forward and it's all a nothing burger, aren't people going to have to just admit that there's really not much to this? And then I see the rabid fan base that wants so desperately for all of this to be true that I think there will be a lull at the very least. If all these whistleblowers come out and we don't get any smoking gun evidence or proof of their claims, I think that people coming out with stories is going to slow down dramatically, because people are going to tire of this. It's like cry wolf, cry wolf, cry wolf. They're all crying alien, crying alien, crying alien, crying alien. Well, show us the alien. And they don't, and they can't, and they never do. So I think that these people crying alien, people are going to tire of that. And then I think that maybe there'll be a little bit of an increase in people demanding evidence. I think we should, when people are making absolutely out of this world fantastical claims, we should demand evidence of their claims and not just blindly accept. Van Tassel is the person, yes. Mr. Van Tassel is the person who ran the Integriton scam. What are your thoughts on Michael Schratt? That's probably a big question to ask me right now. I like Michael as a person very much. I'm very fond of him. I think he's like a good person, but I think Michael is very, very, I don't want to say gullible. That seems like an insult. Michael really, like many people, he really wants to believe it's all true. And I think that has sort of misinformed him, and I also think that, you know, going to work for Dr. Stephen Greer is a real problem for me, because essentially Michael Schratt will be working for Mr. Greer, helping Mr. Greer sell his garbage fairy tales. And to be very honest, I thought better of Michael. I haven't spoken to him. Eventually, I hope that we'll have that conversation, and that I intend to put my cards on the table with him in a polite and kind and respectful way, and I hope that it wouldn't affect our relationship or friendship. I think Michael is he is like a walking encyclopedia of UFO lore, mythology, and history. He's incredibly talented, incredibly intelligent, but I think that he's easily led astray. And I was reminded that this is not the first time that Michael has really gotten behind garbage peddling, because Michael spent a lot of time working with and on the case of Dan Burrish. He did all these illustrations of the so-called alien bases and the J-Rod and all that was all Michael Schratt. So I tend to think about Michael when it comes to his research into black budget projects, which is much more grounded in reality. But when it comes to the alien stuff, I think Michael goes way out on a limb. And I also think that Michael confuses having illustrations made with evidence. A pretty picture is just that. And by the way, Michael Schratt has incredible illustrations of everything he talks about. If you ever see a presentation of his, it's always got the best drawings and sketches and material and visual aids, but that's still not evidence. So that's how I feel about Michael. I wish him the best. I keep him in my thoughts and prayers, especially now that I think he's going into a lion's den of inequity right now. I think that he is, I worry about him. Let's leave it at that. I worry about him in his present course, and I'm hopeful that he and I will have a conversation soon and clear the air, because I like him. I consider him a friend. They never will. Yeah, I think that the grift will go on after these whistleblowers. I think there'll be a lull in activity. If all these whistleblowers come forward and it's all a nothing burger, there will be a big lull in activity. Things are at such a fever pitch right now in the UFO community. Las Vegas, Greer's DC event, and the David Grush interview, all within a few days of each other. People are losing their minds. Yeah, I agree with you, Jacques de Molay. People, the believer side especially, they're like, oh, it's all real. See, we told you. And no, it's not. The Greer conference, I think, was the biggest joke of it. And quite honestly, yeah, let's address that Las Vegas story. Look at all the people selling that Las Vegas story. Did you notice I didn't cover that? There's a reason I didn't cover that story, and that is because I firmly believe that whole story is a hoax. And I decided for once that I was going to sit the hoax out. I wasn't going to cover every aspect of the hoax the whole time, and there was other more important pressing matters to deal with. I thought, I'm going to sit on the sidelines and watch what happens with this. And exactly what I thought would happen happened. In fact, I wrote a short piece on it. Maybe I'll put it on Patreon in the member section, which essentially says that when a hoax comes along, people that cover these things have two choices. They could either cover it honestly and get very little views, or they can cover it sensationally, like it might be true or it might be real. And we can see who the bottom-feeding slimeball dirtballs are that are pushing that story as true and clickbaiting everybody to click on their video about it or whatever, or their show about it. And I just find it interesting that the people that you would suspect are selling garbage, the garbage peddlers, are loving that story, right? Who cares if it's fake? As long as people tune in, who cares if it's fake? As long as I make some money out of it too. And what opportunists, right? I just decided to sit that one out. I say give it 2 more weeks. And last I heard, that family went silent and they weren't responding to any questions or requests for anything. I think the story is a hoax. And anybody who is selling it as anything other than that is a bottom feeding, garbage peddling scumbag. But you know, that's the way I feel about it. And there's lots of people. There's people that have made 2 or 3 shows about that already, right? If it were true, do you really think the government would admit it? No. I think if it is true, the government will be forced to admit it at some tipping point. And I don't think we're anywhere near that tipping point, despite Stephen Bassett saying that he's going to be popping champagne and celebrating disclosure a few weeks ago, right? What do you make of Calcourse Ufology cartoon show? Will you have him on someday soon? Yeah, I don't know. He asked me. I have to get back to him, actually. Thanks for reminding me. I don't know. It's confusing. Like, I'm not quite sure what he's doing there. And he has to explain it to me better. When was the last time the government has admitting to something of this magnitude or even close to it? I don't know. I think the weapons of mass destruction and the Snowden revelations were the last 2 clues that our government lies to us constantly. So, yeah, I agree with you that they likely won't. They will not admit anything unless they are absolutely forced to. Who is the most annoying new star in the UFO community? Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I try not to focus on the negative, but I quite honestly shake my head and am disgusted by so many garbage peddlers that are out there. There's, a lot of these old time grifter scammers like Linda Moulton Howe and some of these others, Richard Hoagland, and they're going to be retiring or dying soon, right? And I remember thinking, well, these people, a lot of these grifters are going to be gone soon. So hopefully we'll get a new batch of more serious researchers who really care about the truth and investigating mysteries and not just selling the story. But it seems to me that if you look around, there's a whole lot of new young faces that are all just begging to be the next Linda Moulton Howe or Richard Hoagland or Corey Good even, right? And they can't wait to get famous and make lots of money selling garbage. And that's very, very discouraging. I hoped for better to come from the younger generation. But what we're seeing is that the grift goes on. But thank you for the question. What's the best drop-dead evidence of ETs right now, in your opinion? Well, I don't think the problem is we don't have drop-dead evidence of ETs right now. What we do have is a lot of tantalizing maybe evidence, tantalizing maybe proof. There's a lot of weirdness with NASA UFOs and things that it appears that they're trying to, play down or explain away as ice crystals. That Darcy Weir documentary was very good in documenting that, but it's not drop dead evidence, but it is compelling. I don't think we have drop dead evidence, and that is the problem, right? Yeah. This may be your first clue that this story out of Las Vegas is a hoax and is fake. Las Vegas kid sells alien NFTs. Yeah. And he also had an alien named or themed YouTube channel before he claimed that he saw aliens. And remember, there was a meteorite at the exact time and place that it was supposed to be a spaceship or a UFO. That's your second clue that this is not what people are pretending it is, right? UFO Reddit lost its mind over the Las Vegas hoax. It was shameful. Yeah, I don't keep track of Reddit. I occasionally read some Reddit posts, but I don't participate there because those people are like, there's a lot of censorship. Like, let's say, for example, there was a thread on UFO Reddit about David Grush. And I saw the thread and I'm reading the thread. If I replied and posted my show about the 10 red flags about David Grush, they delete it. And they say that's self-promotion. Don't you think that maybe this is relevant to this thread? And if people want more information, they should be able to go to my channel and get it? No. It's like, it's carefully curated over there. And it's disappointing to me because, some of those threads have so many thousands of people reading them that it would really be great to be able to, and by the way, I don't spam anybody, but it would be great to be able to say, hey, if you're interested in this Brian Grush story, here's 10 red flags that I did a video about. and you can check it out. They won't let me. I'm not allowed to post over there. Every time I post, somebody deletes it, and I get some nasty message that my post went against the rules of I'm self-promoting or something. No. So I haven't paid attention over there, but it's interesting, right? NFTs are a red flag, also says Brian Verkler. Is ufology right now more like whistle throwers and remote chewing? Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's funny though that, like, I always say, like, that some of these people, it appears that a lot of people in the UFO community, if they had an original thought, it would die of loneliness, right? Like, here we go. Like, okay, so people are getting lots of views and traction saying they have whistleblowers or talking about whistleblowers or interviewing whistleblowers, and now everything is whistleblower now. Oh, there's going to be a whistleblower every week, and this person's coming out with new whistleblowers, and I'm going to have a whistleblower on my show, and you get a whistleblower, and Greer's got his whistleblowers, and Brian Grush is a whistleblower, and there's going to be more whistleblowers coming through Brian Grush that are also everything's whistleblower now. And I think that says a lot about the fact that this topic is largely infested with clickbait garbage peddlers who are just going to do whatever they see other people doing, getting views, right? Do you agree that Mick West's explanation of the Nimitz incident? Yeah, I believe that I do. What did the pilot see? Ars, hallucinogen, or something else? I think it was whatever it was. It wasn't anything extraordinary. It wasn't aliens. That's what I'm sure of. We got lied to because all of these people say things like these things defied the laws of physics, and then after careful analysis, you go, no, they didn't. It's like I said, a lot of this stuff is a carefully constructed illusion of something that it's not. Right. And it's kind of like the Go Fast is another perfect example. Remember, oh, this thing's booking. This thing's going huge, fast speeds. And then we find out it was going 40 miles an hour. And what the hell? Lou Elizondo is supposed to be a UFO expert, right? He was the director, after all, of the Pentagon UFO program. Of course, we then find out that Pentagon UFO program was imaginary and unfunded and not secret. But he still, completely screwed the pooch on that Go Fast video, claiming it was going fast when it wasn't. So, and at some point you have to say these are not just mistakes. This was purposefully deceitful to sell a story, or this was purposefully deceitful to get a book deal, purposefully deceitful to get a TV show deal, purposefully deceitful to sell fake paranormal stuff on a television show. That's how I feel about it. I think that Mick West is usually very, very good in most of his work. Do I agree with everything of his? Probably not, but I haven't looked at everything of his. I do believe that Mick West is an asset, and the fact that he gets attacked so much just for showing people the truth says everything you need to know about this UFO cult-like atmosphere that we find ourselves in. Listen, I get if you believe in aliens. I get if you believe aliens are visiting Earth and have been for many years or decades or, a millennium since the dawn of man, whatever. I get that you believe that. But if something is being pushed as an alien spacecraft visiting Earth and it's really a seagull, don't you want to know that that's not an alien spacecraft, that's really a seagull? Or don't you want to know the truth? Or do you just want to put your blinders on and say, no, Mick West, I don't care about your science and your careful physics analysis that proves this thing isn't what they said it was. I think it's aliens. It's got to be aliens. It's kind of ridiculous. And the fact that he is so viciously attacked. And by the way, I know something about that. Do you know how many people send me nasty messages every day? It used to bother me. Now I read them and I laugh. It's like I have the critic time every morning, I get my choice of caffeinated beverage and I sit down to start work and I open my emails and I go, look at this idiot. Look at this dummy, right? And people argue with me over the most ridiculous. People argued with me over Linda Moulton Howe's orange gray alien. They were sending me nasty messages for months. That's a real picture, Stephen. Yeah. What else do you want me to do? We tracked down the original artist that created those fake images in Brazil. We had to translate because he didn't speak English. We put that interview out. It took us forever. We found the original artist. Those were completely fake pictures. If you still want to argue with me and be nasty to me because you desperately wanted to believe those were real pictures of aliens, I'm not going to apologize for telling you the truth, and you shouldn't attack me for telling the truth. You should probably thank me. Don't you want to know if the pictures are fake? But this is the conundrum that we're in. People get angry when something they desperately wanted to believe was true gets revealed as not so true, right? Amy Collins, there are people who generally do not want to know if something is ordinary. I find that amazing. Yeah, I'm fascinated by that, Amy Collins, just from a psychological perspective. Like, what's going on there that makes people want to be like that? It's just faith-based belief system, though. It's a big universe, and I do think aliens are possible. I just want proof and to play with one, maybe a nice game of chess. Well, that would be interesting. First, you'd have to teach him to play chess because I doubt he would know how to play chess. Just not him. Other pilots said the same thing. The tech to place a square balloon inside a transparent round balloon exists. Yes, they're radar targets. So I think those people saw radar targets. That's Occam's razor, the simplest explanation. Richard Warrener is here and says most people don't, Stephen, for they are indoctrinated. Yeah, very true. And Clausa Klein says we wouldn't need McWest if they would release the radar data. Yeah, that's a valid point. But remember that the garbage peddlers who were selling us that these were aliens, it was their responsibility to get the radar data, right? They got the videos. Why didn't they get the radar data if the radar data exists? Instead, we get excuses, right? Men in Black stories, all kinds of stuff. The guy yesterday seemed very indoctrinated. And perhaps I can send you a picture of angel hair collected after 2 UFO appeared. Yeah, go ahead, send it to me. Is that story of the guy who met these 2 alien chicks and they did the analysis or something? I would like to see that. Richard Brian Verkler says, I am interested in a very small percentage of UFOs that even science scratches their head at. Exactly. The late, great Stanton Friedman had a saying, and that was, he would had this riff, and I'm sorry, I'm going to paraphrase it badly, but he would say, some reports of UFOs are actually just balloons. I don't care about those. Some reports of UFOs are actually just misidentified aircraft, normal earthly aircraft, helicopters, gliders, planes, high altitude balloons. I don't care about any of those. Some UFOs and reports of UFOs are just weather balloons. I don't care about any of those. Some may be ball lightning. I don't care about any of those. I care about the ones that are truly anomalous, truly mysterious, and truly unexplained. He cared about the ones which may be alien spacecraft. And that's what I care about. Same exact thing. I don't care about balloons. We can add, because this was a riff of Stanton Friedman's from many, many years ago before drones became so popular, we can add, I don't care about drones. Don't care about drones. I don't care about kites with lights on them. I don't care about balloons with strings of lights on them. I don't care about flares. I don't care about any of those. I care about the truly mysterious ones that cannot be so easily explained, right? The ones that do exhibit strange flight characteristics, a lack of visible propulsion system, no sound, like what I experienced, no sound, no visible means of propulsion. I care about the truly mysterious anomalous cases as well. I don't care about any of the other stuff. And if I'm looking at something and believe it may be paranormal or mysterious or alien technology, and somebody else can prove that, oh no, that's a glider, Stephen, or that's skydivers with flares or whatever it is, if it's not what I want it to be, I want to know that. And then we move on to the next case. Okay. No big mystery here. It was skydivers with flares, right? And we move on to the next case. Those are the ones that I truly care about. The pilots cannot release the radar data, but if the government wanted to settle it, they could, but they didn't. Yeah, I mean, I think that they should release all of the data. That belongs to all the taxpayers on the same page. What do you think about Walter Bosley? I like Walter Bosley. He's kind of gruff sometimes. Yeah, Walter Bosley's funny though. Sometimes he gets really mad at me for misspeaking something. I love Walter Bosley. He writes some interesting books. Yeah. Walter Bosley is one of the good guys, though. Amy Collins, one of the ones that are reported less than 1% that are unexplained. And even with that, there may or may not be something that seems to defy the laws of physics. Yeah, I agree. The pilot said these radar targets were there against the wind for hours longer than they had fuel to fly. Well, yeah, and I get that. However, you know that pilots get things wrong too, right? They could be wrong. We have to see more data in order to make a proper determination. And until then, we're just spinning our wheels, right? I don't think that the Nimitz encounter or the Tic Tac or the Go Fast were anything extraordinary. I don't think it was anything alien. I think it was a combination of factors, sensor data, bad sensors, a problem with just perception of the pilot who thought he saw something that wasn't really what he saw, but who knows? I hope that those mysteries are more adequately, I think those three have been explained away as nothing extraordinary, but I hope that more data comes forward so that we can definitively say, like, look, this was not what these people sold it to us as. 100%, this is what it was. And I'm hopeful that that will still happen someday. But the fact that so many people pushed the Go Fast, especially, they called it Go Fast. It was going 40 miles an hour. That'll tell you something about how lots of things are massaging the data and being deceptive in order to sell a story that's not quite what we're being told it is. Yeah, so I hope that helps. We have done our due diligence for the week. 4, not 3. We're supposed to do 3 shows a week. We did an extra one. By the way, thanks for everybody for the well wishes for the 1 million views. We will be back from the cabin, and we've got these 3 premieres coming up. We thank all of you for your kindness, generosity, and support. We want to thank you, Twitch subscribers. We want to thank you, YouTube channel members. We want to thank you, Patreon supporters, you super chat friends, super sticker, and super thanks people as well. I noticed an uptick, and I just want to take a moment to thank all of you people who send a super thanks. For those unaware, that's like sending a super chat, but you could do it after the show. Just hit that thanks button, and you could throw a couple bucks in our hat if you enjoy the content that we create here. So we have done our due diligence. We thank our chat room moderators, Mr. Ian, the man with the golden voice, and Spooky as well. And we thank all of you for joining us. I especially want to thank tonight's excellent guest. I already can't wait to have him back here, Mr. Jack Brewer. Excellent author and researcher. I can't tell you how much I recommend the NICAP book that he wrote. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's kind of like part spy novel, part government corruption novel, part UFO story. All the things I love in one book. I highly recommend that, as well as his website. The links are in the description of the video. You can follow him on Twitter. You can buy his books on Amazon, and you can visit his website, Expanding Frontiers Research. And we thank him for his participation. Hope he'll be back soon. Excellent conversation. So we've done our due diligence, and I'm not quite sure. We'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. with a premiere. Then we'll be back Friday at 10 p.m. with a premiere. And then we'll be back Saturday at 10 p.m. with the premiere. And we'll see if I can't pull something out, pull a rabbit out of my hat. Remember, I used to do that. We'll see if we can't pull something out of the archives or maybe finish some project for a Sunday night premiere as well. So what else can I say? We have had, it's been a crazy week. All this whistleblower stuff and Greer stuff all at once. It's been a little wacky, but I like a wacky week full of stuff going on. And I hope next week will be eventful as well. We'll be here to cover it. I hope you'll be here with us. So that's all we got for you, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you.
Sometimes what we need is a soulful song that can bring us all together, heal our hearts. But in times like these, we might need a song like this. I still want to learn to play piano. I could be practicing every day. I keep saying I'd love to start running. I'd be in shape if I had my way. But there were always aliens to think about, Illuminati and the puppet state. Chemtrails poisoning the populace. No use trying, it's much too late. Big croc conspiracy, wacko shit. Deadlock, truth I never will admit. It's only an excuse to quit. conspiracy wacko shit. I spend my days hiding in the basement, isolated as I can get. I sink down deep into my wormhole, the dark side of the internet. I might have liked to drive across America, camping out in the old RV. I'm too scared of queuing on and on and on. They'll hack my brain with the new 5G. Big crock conspiracy wacko shit. Deadlock, the truth I never will admit, gives me an excuse to quit. Conspiracy wacko shit. Fist clenched, strangling my iPad, apocalyptically entertained. I'm sweat drenched, paranoid it's this bad, pure adrenaline in my veins. At least I finally see I have no choices, 'cause everyone's controlled by the deep state. Long as we believe in unseen forces, we never even try to change our fate. Big crock conspiracy wacko shit. Deadlock, the truth I never will admit, it's only an excuse to quit. Conspiracy wacko shit. It's only an excuse to quit. Conspiracy wacko shit. Yeah. I feel better. I hope you do.